Hey everybody, it's Brandon again, coming to you once again from the crossroads of the West, the heart of the Rockies, Salt Lake City, Utah. We are doing our next Q&A today, Q&A number something, but it's our newest Q&A, so we've got a lot of really cool questions. I just have a few housekeeping items I want to address before we jump into the question and answer portion. First of all, some of you might be involved with Sketchbook Summer. Sketchbook Summer is fast drawing to a close. We got a couple days left. It's been really fun watching people be involved this year and seeing all the new stuff that's being done this year. I'm really hoping to see some people totally kill the challenge and see some hand turkeys this year. So hopefully that'll be one of you watching this. With that in mind, normally, well, at least last year, I did kind of a wrap-up video on the last day. This year, I will not be able to do that wrap-up video. My dad has been out of the country for the last 3 years. He just got back in town a couple weeks ago, and we're doing a big family reunion, and it happens to be next week, right when I would normally be doing that wrap-up. So in lieu of doing the wrap-up, I'm going to do something probably a couple days later that's going to be a live post-mortem, where I'll do some live sketching and just kind of talk about this year, Sketchbook Summer this year. And you guys are free to jump in onto the chat and share your experiences as well. So stay tuned for that. I don't know exactly what the date of that's going to be, probably like next Friday, but I'll have some announcements and some invitations. If you're on Facebook, if you follow Green Monk on Facebook, I'll put up like an event that will show when that's going to be, so stay tuned for that. The other thing I wanted to throw out there is, I've been wondering about like how I could get viewers of this YouTube channel to help support Green Monk that's coming out this fall from Image Comics, which you've probably heard me say a million times. I've had a lot of people ask me like, hey, maybe you should do Patreon. Maybe you should start a Patreon page. And I don't do Patreon, and one of the reasons is because I don't want to get distracted and start thinking my job is to do Patreon and start putting all the energy into that. I really want my job to be making comics, and so I prefer asking people to support my comics more directly. So this September, you have the opportunity to buy it. You could pre-order it at Amazon right now. I've included a link here. You can still order it through your local comic book shop, which would be the best way to do it, would be to support your local comic book shop. Still some time to do that. But there is another way you can support the book if you'd like to, that would be super helpful to me. So the entire book in digital format is available on the internet. You can go to Tapas to read the book, or you can even go to thegreenmonk.com. So I'm including links for all of this. I'll include some instructions for this. Go to the webcomic, read the webcomic, and then go to Amazon, and you can leave a review for the book on Amazon. That would be incredibly helpful for me. So if you got some time to do that, if you would really like to support this channel, if you are one of those people that said, hey, I wish I had a Patreon, this would be a super helpful way for you to support the book, and I would really appreciate it. So go read the book on Tapas, go to Amazon, and leave a review. So with that in mind, and all my thanks and gratitude, let's move on to this QA. As always, some really interesting, thought-provoking, and challenging questions, this QA. And I'm going to do my best just to ramble as long as possible about these questions, because I love to hear myself talk. Okay, this is from Wizard of Arts. What happens when a story goes against the world in many different ways? Will it gain popularity from showing the people a new point of view and giving courage to those who think they're alone? Or will it be hated and hunted until the story is destroyed for going against what so many people love? And will the author be praised for their bravery and innovation, or will they be shunned from society? I think both things can and have happened all throughout the world for as long as stories have been told. Super interesting question, and this gets to one of my favorite themes that I've touched on over and over on this channel. If you want to go back and see my video on why I make comics, and also my video on You'll Never Be Famous, and That's Okay, I touch, in both of those videos, I touch on the issue of risk as an artist. And at fear of repeating myself, let me just go into this a little bit and see if I can add something kind of new to the discussion beyond what I've already shared. But basically, there's kind of a price we pay to have great art. You think of this stuff that's just kind of part of our culture that we all just accept as the artistic landscape, whether it's like Marvel Comics or it's like Star Wars stuff, or it's the actual great art like the old literature like Steinbeck or Dostoevsky or any of that great stuff. That stuff came to us through really an evolutionary process. It came to us through a process of failure. Part of the process of having great art is this kind of experimental process whereby we have lots and lots and lots of people that want to make art. They all put their heart into making what they think is the art that the work needs, and then the world kind of selects the art that it's going to praise and it's going to kind of put on a pedestal and use as kind of their cultural guide. So failure is part of the process of us getting great art. There's no way for us knowing which of all these pieces of art that are being created by all the various artists, which thing is going to rise to the top and is going to change the world and be that thing that everyone needs. There's no way of knowing. So we need lots of people trying to make art, to tell their stories, and failure is just part of that process. So we also have to kind of accept and respect and admire those who take the risk of making art, knowing that they might fail and they may not have that monetary success at the very least, or in the best case scenario, that like kind of cultural success as well. And I've mentioned this a lot before. I think the best sources you can look at for understanding kind of risk and why you take risk and kind of embracing the idea of failure as an artist, I would recommend people read Nassim Taleb, particularly Anti-Fragile, and watch Inside Llewyn Davis. I think those things really influenced the way that I thought about failure. Now, at the end of the day, you cannot determine your success as an artist, but the one thing you always have full control over is your own integrity. You have control over matching the way that you talk and the way that you act. So if you have a certain idea and a certain value and a certain dream about art, and you do not act on that art, onto that dream, onto that feeling, on that value, then that's a compromise in your integrity. But if you do, then there's nothing that anyone can do to assail that. So while there is a risk in making art that will not be financially and culturally successful, there is a way that you can go into making art where you can have 100% success rate at making your art correct, making art that you can sleep at night with, that you can be proud of, that you can leave a legacy to your family with. And that's personally what drives me as an artist is to make art that I can be proud of. Hey, I would be super happy if it was financially successful and culturally relevant, but at the end of the day, I have to make art because of my integrity. I have to make it for the right reasons, and I have to focus on that as being kind of the end goal. And I go into those reasons in my other videos, so you can go watch those other videos, especially the one on You'll Never Be Famous, and That's Okay. That goes more into depth of that. But yeah, we don't have any control over the popularity of our art. All we have control over is our own integrity. So go make your art. Make it heartfelt, make it right, take pride in it, work hard, exhaust yourself, suffer for it, and be satisfied with that and move on. All right, so this one is from Mark Love 73. Just watch a video about wages. I lack confidence in my skills, so I work for free. What are your thoughts? So I obviously shared a lot of my thoughts in that video, so you can go back and watch my video, What Are You Worth?, that talks specifically about wages. I don't want to be too redundant here because a lot of the answer to this is going to be in that video. But it's very common for artists at my level or higher up the skill tree than me to advocate for newer artists to not work for free or not to work cheaply. And that makes a lot of sense because it has a very direct economic impact on our wages. When there are a lot of people out there working for free or working cheaply, it depresses all artists' wages. And you combine this with having an industry that has been, proven to be to use like wage fixing amongst various different studios. There's lots of forces depressing the wage of artists. So it absolutely depresses the wage of other artists anytime you as an artist works for free. So that's something that you need to be aware of. You decide how you feel about that. I'm not going to waggle my finger about it. I understand why other artists want to create this norm against doing that, but at the same time, the economic pressures for people to create art for free are pretty strong, and I understand that as well. That being said, I don't know if this logic makes sense to me that because you lack confidence that you should work for free. Or at the very least, the assumption I have there is that you're working for free for other people. Because here's the deal, as an artist, you are investing your time, your energy, and opportunity costs. That means you could be doing other things and you're choosing to do art, and so you're losing out on these other things by doing art. There's a cost to you to create art. My question for you is, why are you making that expenditure in your time and opportunity cost and letting someone else reap the benefits from it? If you're gonna work for free, why not work for free for yourself? Figure out how you can invest in yourself, something you can create for yourself. I just don't see the purpose of creating art for free for other people. The really rare instance when it's okay to do that is when you have a large studio, something like Blizzard or Disney, that has the leverage where they can go to an artist and say, do an art test for us. We're not going to pay you for it. We just want to see if you can do this work. And because they're as big as they are, they can afford to do that. But in almost all other cases, it does no good for you to work for free for someone else when you could be investing that time in yourself. So rather than doing someone else's project, figure out a way that you can invest in your own project. I understand sometimes there are collaborations where people work for free together. In those cases, you really want to make sure that you nurture those relationships, and those are relationships that are worth working together with someone else on. So if you have a writer, artist-writer team, and it's a team, you guys have a great rapport, and you're really like working on, hey, let's work together to get to this place where we're both kind of investing in ourselves, that's a different situation. But otherwise, I don't see the situation where it would ever be a benefit to you or to other artists for you to be working for free. All right, got a couple from Don Jorgensen here. Always ask really cool questions. I have been thinking about the rules of art, what looks good in terms of shading, layout, etc., and wondering about how to balance following the rules and taking risks or trying something new in terms of the creative process. So this is a really deep subject, and this is something I have addressed before. Which video was it where I talked about this? It's about, I don't know, I'll put this up in text once I remember which video it is that addresses this. But anyway, the main idea here is that there's kind of two things that you do as an artist. You master skills and you innovate. And they're completely different skills, and your success as an artist could be more or less dependent on one of those two things. So whatever you do, you have to focus a little bit on mastery. So you're talking about, what looks good, shading, layout, etc. You do have to focus a little bit on mastery. I don't think anyone ever gets by without mastery. But there's also a great amount of success that you can find through innovation, and innovation is a completely different skill than mastery. Innovation looks like Kim Jung-gi. That's why I always talk about Kim Jung-gi. It's because none of the stuff I ever read about mastery would have led me logically to get to a place where I could be doing stuff like Kim Jung-gi. He came out and he clearly has a certain level of mastery, but he is doing stuff in a certain way that is different than how anyone else is doing stuff. And so there's innovation to how he is doing things. I also believe that personally, that's always been the strength that I've had as an artist. I am generally pretty good. I'm above average in a lot of artistic skills, I feel pretty good about that, but there's painters better than me, there's character designers better than me, there's layout artists better than me, there's visual storytellers better than me. But the thing that I've really felt that has helped me stand out and get ahead has been my ability to innovate and my ability to think of different ways to approach things and to try things, whether they be visual ideas or storytelling ideas. And so those are two different things that you need to think about, and you need to decide which one of these things am I strongest at, or how am I going to balance working on these two things. Maybe you do want to focus somewhat on mastery, which I absolutely have spent a lot of my time focusing on mastery, but then allow yourself as well some time to innovate. And sometimes innovating, there's not a linear path to innovating. That's what makes it innovation. You can't create a program that says, here's our innovation program. It means allowing yourself the freedom to be interested in whatever you want to be interested in, to be able to explore things that have nothing to do with art, and then somehow to tie it all together and bring it back and mix it up in some way that is of value to the rest of society. So it's a very chaotic, unpredictable process, which is why it works, because it's not obvious, it's not easy, it's not linear, but the payoffs can be very, very big with successful innovation. So there's some of my thoughts on that. Okay, another one from Dawn. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on whether you see there being any meaningful distinction between the fine arts and commercial or pop art, both from the perspective of an artist and as a consumer. Gee whiz. Okay, that's a deep one. I don't know if I spent enough time thinking about this one before I tried to respond to it. So let me think about it for a second, and maybe I'll cut back once I'm done thinking. All right, so honestly, I thought about this for 5 minutes silently, and then I tried to say something about it, and it was just kind of rambling and not going anywhere, and so I just cut all that out. I'm going to take another attempt at hitting this. Honestly, I'm not a fantastic historian when it comes to art history, and so when we're talking about the fine arts, I don't know if I really understand the history of fine arts as well as others might understand it. My kind of feeling is that the fine arts are kind of this term that I'm not sure how relevant it is anymore. There was a time when there were certain types of art that could only be created through the investment of wealthy patrons. And I think, just production was much more expensive. Like the Sistine Chapel, you can't create off of an assembly line. And that was true of all these great paintings by all the masters. They were time intensive, and they were singular and unique pieces. And so I think that term really came about through that era of patronage, where you had these expensive pieces that were just these unique and just valuable and priceless pieces of art. That's kind of where fine art came from. I mean, the alternative at that time to fine art was like folk art. It was people playing, music around the campfire, or, drawing scribbles on whatever, a piece of paper or things like that. Or, folk dances. And so they were things that could be easily shared amongst lots of people, and the fine arts were things that could only be financed through these wealthy patrons, like I said. So I don't know how relevant that is today, because, we talk about commercial or pop art, and that's completely changed the way that art worked. And it already had, even back in the day when we had fine art, it had already changed things with the invention of the printing press, where literature could be mass produced. So I don't know how relevant the idea of fine art is now, because there are things that are created through mass production that are just as good as anything that you might see within a museum. I mean, it may make a difference when it comes to the specific economics of contemporary art, and who's buying contemporary art, and how wealthy people use that as a place to store their wealth. But yeah, I mean, maybe the question is trying to get to this idea that some people think that fine art is real art and that commercial art is not real art. And I don't know, I kind of feel like as a society, we're kind of past that point. I don't see as many people. Back when I was growing up, that was much more of a thing, like people that were academics and old artsy people, they really made that distinction between fine art and pop art. And I think we're seeing that less and less. On that same token, commercial art can still be total crap. I mean, it can be mass-produced garbage, and just the very nature of mass production can just cheapen the value to a lot of people, which is something I've talked more about in my video on wages. So, yeah, I don't know if I have anything super meaningful to say about that, but just to say that I think that the time has changed, that I don't even know how meaningful the term fine arts are anymore. I think with mass production now, we have lots and lots of great artwork that is mass produced and seen by a very wide audience. So, and you know what? It's just kind of the nature of things that when you open up tools to lots and lots of people, when you make those accessible to lots and lots of people, people are going to create lots and lots of crap. I mean, that's what YouTube is. YouTube is just this collection of just garbage. I mean, 99% of what you see on YouTube is just garbage, and that's true of almost any art field out there. I mean, I'm sure that 99% of comics and movies and anything else where we've made the tools accessible, most of the stuff is going to be garbage. But it actually has the effect. I've heard this criticism before that, like, when you make tools accessible to everyone, it creates kind of this mediocrity. Like, people have talked about, like, all these like creates these gray. I can't remember the word it said, but I totally disagree with that. I think when you open the tools, you make tools accessible to everyone, it means you have more people in the game, you have more competition. Sure, you have more garbage, you have more mediocrity, but you also have more competition, and I think you have greater art at the top. I mean, just look at like television over the last 20 years and how much fantastic television there has been. Making those tools accessible has created a space where people can rise to the top and make great art. So, not sure how great of an answer that was, but I guess we filled some time. It would be a good one maybe for you guys to respond to and comment on, and maybe we can start a discussion and get somewhere. Can't say that I really had anything really strong to say about that, but something to think more about. All right, this last one is from Legend Keeper. Hey Brandon, I really resonate with the problem of finding artists in my local community. I have been teaching myself how to draw for the last few years and have found it very difficult at times to deal with the isolation and lack of true interest in my art. Excuse me. Do you have any advice on finding not so much other artists but supportive people in a community that will be able to push you further without necessarily being artists themselves? Thanks for the video and discussion about the questions. Some very thought-provoking stuff. It would be cool to see some videos on how you begin a piece of art. Okay, that's something I'm actually planning on doing. So we'll get to that at another time. So this is a issue I've been thinking quite a bit about. I've been talking about artistic community quite a bit. I made the video "Brooklyn Doesn't Need You" a while back, which talked about kind of finding an artistic community, trying to be part of building, a neighborhood, a more urban neighborhood, and how important that could be, and my personal experience with that. I just finished a really fantastic book. It's Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. I highly recommend any of you guys pick it up and check it out. And it just talks about the crisis of civic dissolution that we've had, particularly in the United States, and how we used to have all these different ways that people interacted communally. I mean, there used to be these more formalized ways, such as going to church or volunteering or being parts of clubs like the Lions Club or the Rotary or the Shriners, all these kind of like volunteer clubs, but also like less formal ways that people used to be involved more with each other. People used to play sports more with each other, and they used to, play cards and games and visit one another more often. Like dropping in to visit someone's house was a much more common thing, just 20 or 30 years ago. No, not 20, more time ago than that, more like 40 years ago. It was far more common. So that's all kind of like gone away, particularly since the 60s. A lot of that stuff, people are just less engaged communally. So it's super interesting, and he goes into a lot of reasons why this is very problematic and causing a lot of the issues we see now, which is political division and greater kind of segregation of interests and and all sorts of issues. And he talks about some of the reasons. I mean, some of the reasons have to do with the advent of television and how people just started staying at home to entertain themselves, and like suburban design and changes in kind of like working habits. But anyway, to get back to the point, so all of us are probably kind of living in this world we see now where just not being involved in a community is kind of the norm, where most of us sit at home and watch YouTube videos or Netflix, or we play video games, or, you know, we're just much more isolated as people than we used to be. So the trick is, how do you start being more engaged with your community and connect with the community around you, whether or not it's artists? And Robert Putnam actually has some really fascinating research that shows that finding some community involvement can have really dramatic effects on your health too. The evidence is extremely strong that being involved communally can have as dramatic an effect on your health as quitting smoking or losing weight. So if you're too not self-disciplined enough to do either of those things, you could get involved with your community, and that could have as big of an impact on your health. So yeah, my recommendation would be find ways to engage with your community. You'll find that those things will be, I think, supportive of your art if you can do that. Some ideas about how you can accomplish that. I think meetup.com is a really fantastic website. I think it's something that we should engage with a lot more as an alternative to things like Facebook or Twitter, because it is built around the idea of meeting people face to face. So go check out meetup.com, see what groups are meeting in your local area, if they share any interest with you, and start finding a group to hang out with. The other thing to do is to be involved in your community and community government. If you have something like a community council, or even like an HOA, or your city council if it's a small enough city or town, be involved with those things. Just commit to yourself that if there are monthly meetings for whatever it is, that you're going to go to those meetings and participate. One of the things that Robert Putnam showed is to get the effects of being involved in some sort of community group, you really only need to participate once a month to get those benefits. So, I mean, if you have a church group that you'd like to be involved with, that can benefit you, but also less formal things too. Setting up a game night, starting some sort of your own club, or joining some pre-existing group or some pre-existing club. Search for those opportunities, but sometimes you need to start that thing yourself, and you need to be the pioneer that creates something new. I've been involved now for almost 10 years with a group of comic book artists. We just informally call it Draw Night. It was never something that was put together formally with invitations and all that jazz. It was just a group of artists that just started meeting together every Tuesday night and drawing. I go through different periods where I go more regularly and other periods where I go less regularly, but that's an amazing thing, an amazing resource to have, where you have something where you can go every single week and engage with other people, with other artists. Super healthy and super important thing, and that's for myself personally. So think about starting something. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super formal, but there's lots of opportunities and options if you look for them, and it's going to have a very healthy effect on you mentally, psychologically, physically, and I think it will help you as an artist as well. Okay, so that was a particularly rambly, long Q&A, but I really appreciate the questions, some really fun questions. If you guys have some questions you would like me to answer, of course, you can just put them in the comments below. That's probably the best place to leave your questions, is in the comments. Of course, I'm on Facebook, Green Monk on Facebook. You can leave questions there. You can hit me up over Twitter, just Brandon Dayton on Twitter. Instagram, I guess you could ask me on Instagram. That's not a great vehicle for that. Or you could always email me. My email is brandondayton@gmail.com. Very easy to remember. So hopefully that was worthwhile for you guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Let's start a discussion. If you like this video, of course, please like it. Please subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.